The stench of cordite hangs heavy in the air, a noxious cloud that clings to every surface, every soldier, and every tank. The ground beneath your feet is a morass of freezing mud, sucking the life out of your boots with every step. The cacophony of war is deafening. The staccato burst of machine gun fire, the thunderous boom of artillery, and the screech of planes screaming overhead. You can feel the fear, a palpable entity that seeps into your bones, making every decision a life-or-death gamble. This is the Eastern Front, where the very fabric of the war is being torn asunder. It's June 6, 1944, and the Allies are about to launch the largest amphibious assault in history, D-Day. But as the world watches the beaches of Normandy, a different story is unfolding on the Eastern Front. Hitler's blind spot, his fixation on the Western Allies, has led him to underestimate the Soviet Union's capabilities. The German army is stretched thin, with divisions scattered across the continent, trying to hold back the tide of the Red Army. The Führer's 10-minute blunder, a miscalculation that would change the course of the war, is about to be revealed. As we delve into the chaos of war, the sensory details become even more intense. The smell of smoke and sweat hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the acrid tang of cordite. The sound of gunfire is relentless, a constant drumbeat that wears down the nerves. The feel of the mud beneath your feet is like a cold, wet shroud, sucking the life out of your boots with every step. The sight of destruction is all around: burning tanks, shattered buildings, and the twisted wreckage of planes. But to understand how this moment came to pass, we must journey back in time to the geopolitics that led to this point. The German army, once a juggernaut, is now struggling to maintain its grip on the Eastern Front. The Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, has been pushing the Germans back. Slowly but surely, the tide of the war is turning, and Hitler's generals are warning him of the dangers of underestimating the Soviet Union. But the Führer is resolute, convinced that the Western Allies are the greater threat. The technology of war is also playing a crucial role in this drama. The German army is equipped with the latest tanks, including the Panzer IV and the Tiger I. These behemoths of steel are capable of delivering devastating firepower, with the Panzer IV's 75mm gun and the Tiger I's 88mm gun making them nearly invulnerable to enemy fire. But the Soviet Union has its own secrets, including the T-34 tank, a machine that would become the backbone of the Red Army. The T-34's combination of mobility, firepower, and armor makes it a formidable opponent, capable of withstanding even the most intense battles. As the war rages on, the air war is also heating up. The German Luftwaffe, once the master of the skies, is now facing stiff competition from the Soviet Air Force. The Messerschmitt Bf 109, a legendary fighter plane, is being challenged by the Soviet Yak-3, a machine that is fast, agile, and deadly. The Bf 109's Daimler-Benz DB605 engine, capable of producing over 400 horsepower, makes it a formidable opponent. But the Yak-3's Klimov VK105 engine, with its 200 horsepower, is no slouch either. The battle for air superiority is raging, with both sides trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. The caliber of the guns is also a critical factor in this war. The German army is equipped with the 88mm flak gun, a legendary anti-aircraft weapon that is also capable of delivering devastating firepower against enemy tanks. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, has its own secrets, including the 122mm howitzer, a gun that can deliver a massive payload of explosive force. The 88mm flak gun, with its 9.2 kg shell, can penetrate even the thickest armor, while the 122mm howitzer, with its 21.7 kg shell, can blast a hole in the earth, creating a crater that can swallow a tank whole. As the Allies prepare to launch their D-Day assault, the German army is in disarray. Hitler's generals are warning him of the dangers of underestimating the Soviet Union, but the Führer is resolute. He believes that the Western Allies are the greater threat, and that the Soviet Union can be handled later. But this miscalculation, this 10-minute blunder, will prove to be a fatal mistake. The Soviet Union is not a force to be underestimated, and as the war rages on, the German army will find itself facing an enemy that is determined, relentless, and ultimately unstoppable. The German army's situation is precarious, to say the least. They are stretched thin, with divisions scattered across the continent, trying to hold back the tide of the Red Army. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, is gaining momentum, pushing the Germans back with every passing day. The battle for the Eastern Front is a war of attrition, with both sides trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. But as the Allies launch their D-Day assault, the balance of power is about to shift, and the German army will find itself facing an enemy that is determined to destroy it. The Soviet Union's strategy is simple: to wear down the German army, to grind it down with relentless pressure, and to ultimately destroy it. The Soviet generals, including Georgy Zhukov and Konstantin Rokossovsky, are masterminds of war, capable of outmaneuvering and outflanking their opponents. They know that the key to victory lies in the ability to adapt, to change tactics and strategies on the fly, and to exploit the weaknesses of their enemies. The German army, on the other hand, is rigid, inflexible, and unable to adapt to the changing circumstances of war. As the war rages on, the stakes are higher than ever before. The fate of Europe hangs in the balance, and the outcome of the war is far from certain. The German army is fighting for its life, trying to hold back the tide of the Red Army, while the Soviet Union is pushing forward, determined to destroy its enemy. The Allies, meanwhile, are watching with bated breath, waiting to see how the war will unfold. Will the German army be able to hold back the Soviet Union, or will the Red Army prove to be too powerful to stop? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the war will be won or lost on the Eastern Front, and the fate of Europe will be decided in the next few weeks. The German army's situation is becoming increasingly desperate. They are running out of men, out of tanks, and out of ammunition. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, seems to have an endless supply of resources, pouring men and machines into the battle like a never-ending tide. The German generals are warning Hitler of the dangers of underestimating the Soviet Union, but the Führer is resolute. He believes that the Western Allies are the greater threat, and that the Soviet Union can be handled later. But this miscalculation, this 10-minute blunder, will prove to be a fatal mistake. As the war rages on, the battle for the Eastern Front is becoming increasingly intense. The German army is fighting for its life, trying to hold back the tide of the Red Army, while the Soviet Union is pushing forward, determined to destroy its enemy. The Allies, meanwhile, are watching with bated breath, waiting to see how the war will unfold. The fate of Europe hangs in the balance, and the outcome of the war is far from certain. But one thing is certain: the war will be won or lost on the Eastern Front, and the fate of Europe will be decided in the next few weeks. The question is, will the German army be able to hold back the Soviet Union, or will the Red Army prove to be too powerful to stop? Only time will tell. As the German army launched its surprise counterattack in the Ardennes forest, the Allies were initially caught off guard, struggling to comprehend the scale and ferocity of the assault. The morning of December 16, 1944, dawned cold and foggy, with visibility reduced to mere meters, perfectly suiting the German tactics of infiltration and ambush. The German forces, comprising the 6th Panzer Army, the 5th Panzer Army, and the 7th Army, began their advance, aiming to split the Allied forces and capture the strategic port of Antwerp. The German commander, Adolf Hitler, had meticulously planned the operation, codenamed Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, with the intention of driving a wedge between the American and British forces, thereby crippling the Allied advance into Germany. However, the plan was not without its flaws, and the Germans soon encountered unforeseen challenges. The dense forest and treacherous terrain hindered the movement of their heavy tanks, particularly the Tiger II, which, although formidable, was cumbersome and prone to mechanical failures. As the morning wore on, the Allies began to regroup and respond to the German onslaught. The American 101st Airborne Division, stationed in Bastogne, found itself surrounded by the advancing German forces. The division's commander, General Anthony McAuliffe, famously responded to the German demand for surrender with a single word: nuts. The Americans, though outnumbered, held their ground, relying on their superior artillery and air support to repel the German attacks. The German forces, meanwhile, were experiencing significant logistical challenges. Their supply lines, stretched thin and vulnerable, were repeatedly disrupted by Allied air raids and guerrilla attacks. The Germans had failed to account for the resilience of the Belgian resistance, which played a crucial role in harassing their rear echelons and disrupting their communication networks. The lack of reliable communication, in turn, hindered the German command's ability to coordinate their forces effectively, leading to confusion and delays on the battlefield. In the afternoon, the German panzer divisions, led by the 6th Panzer Army, launched a series of flanking maneuvers, aiming to outmaneuver the American defenses. The German tanks, including the Panther and Tiger II, clashed with the American Shermans and M26 Pershings, resulting in intense and brutal tank battles. The German tanks, with their thicker armor and more powerful guns, initially gained the upper hand, but the Americans adapted quickly, employing innovative tactics such as tank destroyer teams, which combined the firepower of tanks and infantry to devastating effect. As the day wore on, the Allies began to gain the upper hand, thanks in large part to their superior air power. The P-47 Thunderbolt and P-51 Mustang fighter bombers, operating from bases in France and Britain, pounded the German columns, destroying tanks, trucks, and troop concentrations with impunity. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, was largely absent, having been severely depleted by months of relentless Allied bombing campaigns. As night began to fall, the German forces, exhausted and depleted, dug in along the edges of the forest, preparing to face another grueling day of combat. The Americans, meanwhile, regrouped and reinforced their positions, anticipating a renewed German assault at dawn. The battle had reached a critical juncture, with both sides suffering heavy casualties and neither able to gain a decisive advantage. In the darkness, the German commanders, including General Josef Dietrich and General Hasso von Manteuffel, convened to assess the situation and plan their next move. They knew that time was running out, as the Allies were rapidly reinforcing their positions and preparing to launch a counterattack. The Germans had to break through the American lines quickly, or risk being engulfed by the gathering Allied forces. The night was filled with the sound of artillery fire, as both sides exchanged barrages, attempting to weaken the other's resolve and prepare the ground for the next day's battle. The German commanders, aware of the risks, decided to press on, committing their last reserves to the fray. The stage was set for a climactic confrontation, one that would decide the fate of the Ardennes campaign and, ultimately, the course of the war. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the German forces launched a final, desperate assault, aiming to shatter the American defenses and reach the strategic town of Bastogne. The battle was about to enter its most intense and decisive phase, with the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. The Allies, however, were ready, having prepared a series of defensive positions, including the famous island of Bastogne, which would become the epicenter of the battle. The German attack, spearheaded by the 6th Panzer Army, crashed against the American lines, only to be met with a wall of steel and fire. The Americans, bolstered by their artillery and air support, held firm, slowly but surely pushing the Germans back. The battle was turning into a grinding, attritional struggle, with both sides suffering heavy losses, but the Allies gaining the upper hand. As the day wore on, the Germans became increasingly desperate, committing their last reserves to the battle. The Tiger II tanks, once the terror of the battlefield, were now being picked off by the American tank destroyers and fighter bombers. The German infantry, exhausted and depleted, was unable to withstand the relentless Allied onslaught. In the end, it was the German commanders who realized that the battle was lost and that their forces were on the brink of collapse. The Allies, having weathered the storm, were now poised to launch a devastating counterattack, one that would drive the Germans back across the Rhine and seal the fate of the Third Reich. The Ardennes campaign, once a daring German gamble, had turned into a disastrous defeat, one that would haunt the German high command for the remainder of the war. The battle, which had begun with such promise for the Germans, had ultimately been decided by the Allies' superior air power, logistics, and tactics. The German commanders, including Hitler, had underestimated the resilience and determination of the American forces, and had paid the price for their miscalculation. As the Allies began their counterattack, the Germans were forced to retreat, leaving behind thousands of dead and wounded soldiers, and the shattered remnants of their once proud armies. The Ardennes campaign, one of the bloodiest and most intense battles of the war, had finally come to an end, but its legacy would live on, a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the soldiers who had fought and died on both sides. The battle had been a turning point in the war, marking the beginning of the end of the German army's ability to launch large-scale offensives, and paving the way for the Allied victory in Europe. As the Allies pushed forward, they would encounter increasingly fierce resistance, but they would never again face a challenge as daunting as the one they had overcome in the Ardennes. The after-th of Hitler's 10-minute blunder, which occurred during the Battle of the Bulge, is a testament to the far-reaching consequences of a single, pivotal decision. This turning point in the war marked a significant shift in the balance of power, ultimately contributing to the downfall of the Third Reich. 1. The turning point. The turning point in this scenario was Hitler's decision to delay the launch of the counterattack by 10 minutes, allowing the Allied forces to regroup and reassess their position. This brief window of time enabled the Allies to adjust their strategy, ultimately leading to the failure of the German counterattack. The delay can be attributed to a combination of factors, including poor communication, inadequate intelligence, and an underestimation of the enemy's strength. Furthermore, the harsh winter weather conditions, characterized by dense fog and freezing temperatures, hindered the German forces' ability to mobilize and coordinate their efforts effectively. The Allies, on the other hand, were able to capitalize on these conditions, utilizing their superior air power and artillery to devastating effect. A specific weapon that played a crucial role in the Allied victory was the M4 Sherman tank, which proved highly effective in navigating the treacherous terrain and providing cover for the infantry. The German forces, however, were hampered by their reliance on outdated weaponry, including the Panther tank, which was plagued by mechanical issues and limited mobility. The Allies' strategic use of artillery, particularly the 105mm howitzer, also proved instrumental in breaking through the German lines and securing key strongpoints. In addition, the Allies' effective use of intelligence gathering, including reconnaissance missions and code breaking, allowed them to anticipate and prepare for the German counterattack. This intelligence advantage enabled the Allies to deploy their forces more effectively, ultimately contributing to the German defeat. 2. The cost asterisk. The human cost of Hitler's 10-minute blunder was staggering. The Battle of the Bulge, which lasted from December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945, resulted in an estimated 246 American soldiers killed, 493 wounded, and 218 missing or captured. The German forces suffered equally heavy losses, with approximately 12,000 soldiers killed, 30,000 wounded, and 30,000 missing or captured. The destruction of infrastructure was also significant, with many towns and villages reduced to rubble. The city of Bastogne, which was a key strategic location, was left in ruins, with over 80% of its buildings destroyed. The battle also resulted in the destruction of hundreds of tanks, aircraft, and artillery pieces, further depleting the German military's already dwindling resources. The economic cost of the battle was also substantial, with estimates suggesting that the United States spent over $1 billion on the battle, a staggering amount considering the economic conditions of the time. The battle also had a significant impact on the German economy, as the loss of manpower and resources further weakened the already struggling German war machine. The destruction of infrastructure and industry also had long-term consequences, contributing to the post-war economic struggles of Germany and the broader European region. The social cost of the battle was also significant, with many civilians caught in the crossfire and forced to flee their homes. The battle resulted in a significant displacement of people, with many forced to live in makeshift camps or shelters. The psychological toll of the battle was also significant, with many soldiers on both sides suffering from what would later be known as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The battle also had a profound impact on the families of those who fought, with many left to pick up the pieces and cope with the loss of loved ones. 3. The legacy asterisk. The legacy of Hitler's 10-minute blunder is a lasting one, with far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the immediate aftermath of the battle. The failure of the German counterattack marked a significant turning point in the war, as it allowed the Allied forces to regain the initiative and push deep into German territory. The battle also marked a significant shift in the balance of power, as the Soviet Union began to assert its dominance on the Eastern Front. The Allies' victory in the Battle of the Bulge paved the way for the eventual defeat of German as the Soviet Union advanced on Berlin and the Western Allies pushed into the heart of Germany. The battle also had a profound impact on modern warfare, as it highlighted the importance of adaptability, intelligence gathering, and strategic planning. The use of air power, artillery, and armored vehicles played a crucial role in the Allied victory, and these tactics would go on to shape the nature of modern warfare. The battle also demonstrated the importance of leadership, as the decisions made by commanders on both sides had a significant impact on the outcome of the battle. The legacy of the battle can be seen in the modern military's emphasis on speed, maneuverability, and decisive action, as well as the importance of protecting civilians and minimizing collateral damage. In the years following the battle, the world would come to realize the true horror of the Nazi regime, as the full extent of the Holocaust and other atrocities became known. The Nuremberg trials, which took place in 1945 and 1946, would hold top Nazi officials accountable for their crimes, and the world would come to understand the true nature of the evil that had been unleashed upon it. The legacy of the battle would also serve as a reminder of the importance of standing up against tyranny and oppression, and the need for eternal vigilance in the face of evil. As we reflect on the events of that fateful day, we are reminded that the consequences of a single decision can be far-reaching and devastating. The 10-minute delay that sealed the fate of the German counterattack serves as a chilling reminder of the importance of leadership, strategy, and adaptability in the heat of battle. And as we look out upon the world today, we are reminded that the legacy of Hitler's 10-minute blunder continues to shape our world, a world where the threat of tyranny and oppression still lurks, waiting to strike. The battle may be over, but the war against evil is never truly won, and it is up to us to remain vigilant, to stand strong against the forces of darkness, and to never forget the lessons of history. The consequences of failure are too terrible to contemplate, and the price of freedom is too high to pay. As the last survivors of the battle fade away, their memories and experiences lost to the passage of time, we are left with a haunting question. What will we do when the next Hitler rises, and the world is once again plunged into darkness? The answer, much like the outcome of that fateful battle, remains uncertain, leaving us with a chilling and powerful statement. The war against evil is never truly won, only delayed, and the next battle is always just a heartbeat away.